In this video, let's understand the intuition behind interest rate. And for that, let's actually study together the simple interest and the compound interest. And the best way to understand concepts is to study them in blocks. So take them in combination with another topic. So for instance, simple interest goes hand in hand with compound interest. If you get the difference between the two, you get the topic. So compound interest. And let's solve it with an example to see what's it about. So let's say we have $100. Let's say we have $100 in both cases. Here we have $100 and here we have $100. And let's say that overall the interest rate, so the interest rate equals to 10%. Now that's 10% per year. So let's suppose that our timing is per year. Okay, so let's see what happens. We have $100 now. So usually we know that as T0, right? Time now. We have $100. So let's say 100. Now, what happens 1 year from now? T1. How much money will we have? Well, we will have the $100 initially, plus 10% from $100. So we will have 10% multiplied with $100. And that's equal to 100 plus 10, which is $110. Okay, what happens in 2 years from now? Well, we will have $100 plus 10% of $100 for 1 year and another 10% from $100 for the second year. So that's equal to 100 plus 10 plus 10, which is equal to 120. So we have $110, $120. Let's do it for one more year. What happens in year 3? Well, we have $100 plus $10 in our second year plus another 10% of 100, and in the last year we have one more time 10%. So that's $100 plus 10 plus 10 and another 10, and that's equal to $130. So if we keep going, what would be our formula? How much money would we have in a certain time, at a certain point? Let's say Tn, and n can be any number. Well, at that point, let's call it, the value of p. Let p be our payment. So the payment at a certain point in time equals to the initial payment. Remember, that's the $100 from the first year, from here, multiplied with 1 plus the interest rate times the amount of periods. So for instance, if we want to find out the payment value in the 4th year, that would be the initial payment times 1 plus 10% multiplied with 4 periods. And does it make sense if we open the brackets? Well, let's see. P4 would be equal to, we take the first term and we multiply with each term inside the brackets. That would be P0 times 1 plus P0 times 0.1 times 4. Well, that would be equal to P0 plus P0 times 0.4. And I hope this makes sense, because at the end of the day what we see is that the value of our payment is the initial payment value plus the interest rate, which is 10%, times 4 periods, which makes it into 0.4, and the 0.4, the interest comes out of the initial payment. That's why we multiply it with P0. So I hope this formula makes sense. So that's for the simple interest rate. And we said, let's do it with a compound interest. Let's do it in combination with compound interest to see the difference. The idea of compound interest rate is that we get interest for our interest. That's the only difference. Let's take this color and let's see how it works out. So again, we have $100 initially in the first year. Then we have $100 plus 10% of this 100. Let me go a bit to the right to have more space. That's equal to 100 plus 10, and that's equal to 110. Okay, we got that. What happens one more year from now? Well, we have $100, but now we are getting the 10% from the $100 initially plus the $10 that we got in 1 year. So we would have 110, which is from here, plus 10% of this $110, and that's equal to 121. Now, how can we write 121 in terms of $100 initially? Well, all we did was to take the $100 initially, we took the 10% for the first year, and we took 10% of it again in the second year. So on everything we took once again 10%, 1 plus 10%, and that leads us to 121. Now if we do it again for the next year, well, we would get to the same thing. We would have 121 to begin with, which is from here, plus 10% out of 121, and that's equal to 121 plus 12.1, which is equal to 133.1. Now, what is 133.1 in terms of $100 initially? Well, that was equal to $100 initially times 1 plus 10%. Then we took it, multiplied with 1 plus 10% for the second year, and then we took it once again in our third year, so 1 plus 10%. Now, what do? We multiply 1 plus 10% 3 times, so that's 100 multiplied with 1 plus 10% to the power of 3. So if we write this as a general formula, how would that look like? Well, the payment in a certain period, the payment at time t, is equal to our initial payment, which is 100 in our case, times 1 plus our interest rate to the power of our number of periods, because we literally compound the interest every year. So we add interest upon interest. And this is the difference between compound interest, which I think is also more common than the simple interest. That's it for this video. That's just some theory to lay out the background for interest rate. In the next videos we'll actually solve some of the questions.